Hey, what's already? Welcome back to News Dose, and I got some bad news for PlayStation today, but ironically, I think this is actually kind of good news for fans. Yeah, that might sound like a contradiction, but no, I really don't think so in this case, and I'm going to explain why today. Now, we also have a controversial announcement by Nintendo, which, truthfully, I don't find this surprising at all, but we're going to get into all of that as well. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you so much for what you do, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's go and get right into things, though, starting off with Ubisoft, because as we talked about the other day, they announced that they are going through a major shakeup, and because of that, they've canceled and delayed a number of different projects. Well, one game that fans immediately asked about was Beyond Good and Evil 2. I mean, if they canceled Prince of Persia out of all games, a game that was practically finished, well, that doesn't seem like it would bode all that well for a game that's been in development hell for close to 2 decades by this point, which is crazy to think about, but reportedly, it has surprisingly survived yet again. I mean, somebody over at Ubisoft must really believe in this project, but nonetheless, this information comes from Insider Gaming, which, they have proven to be a legitimate inside source. So yeah, fans of Beyond Good and Evil can kind of rest easy knowing that the sequel is still in development. Now, when it'll actually release, yeah, that's in a whole different fiasco. Now, we also got some really good news for the Switch 2 because a big game just got a free upgrade. And as you can see on screen, that's for none other than Rocket League. I actually used to play this game a ton. It's probably one of my all-time favorite multiplayer games, and it's nice to see that it's going strong with a Switch 2 upgrade, which will include docked 1080p resolution at 60 frames per second. In handheld mode, it'll be a dynamic 1080p at 60 frames per second. It'll also have increased world detail and high texture quality in handheld mode. Also, it'll have improved lighting, high-res shadows, and better texture detail all around. So, really a lot of good stuff in this upgrade, and again, it's free, which is important for today's video. I'll get into that a little bit more here in just a bit, but it's nice to see certain developers go out of their way to make their games better for their already existing fans without price gouging them. Oh, and it looks like we can zero in on Control Resonant's release date, or at least according to a recent investors report from Remedy themselves. So, I mean, that's a fairly good source, but yeah, they claim that it would be out in Q2 of 2026, though in their own words, it could still be pushed into Q3. Now, if it does release in Q2, that would mean that it'll release between April and June, but if they can't pull that off for whatever reason, then we're looking at between July and September. And that might be a bit surprising. I think a lot of people were expecting it to release later than that, but you have to remember that GTA 6, or at least as of this moment, is planned for a late 2026 launch, and, companies right now are trying to avoid their release dates anywhere near that game. Now, at the same time, I firmly believe that GTA 6 will get another delay. We're going to see about all of that, but hey, it's better for these companies to prepare ahead of time, and because of that, I think we're going to have a lot of bigger game releases before October of this year. Usually a lot of the big games come out in November and December, but I think it's going to be a bit different this year because of GTA 6. I mean, we'll see what happens, but I'm certainly interested in Control Resonant. I enjoyed the first game, and I am a big fan of Remedy Entertainment. They're such a weird and creative developer, and I want to see what they've been cooking up this time for Control Resonant. All right, now let's just go and talk about what's happening with PlayStation, and technically, this is bad news for Sony. Now, I don't really think it's bad news for fans, per se, and that's because we are talking about a PlayStation 6 delay. See, what's happening here is that according to a Sandstone Insight Japan analysis, they claimed that Sony is expecting the PlayStation 5 lifecycle to be extended and that the PS6 will be delayed, quote-unquote, longer than many expected. Now, based on everything that we already know, there's been a lot of rumors, leaks, and information for the PlayStation 6 this past year, but it sounds like they were originally planning for a 2028 launch, and Sony has already come to the table to discuss next-generation plans with fans. They didn't do that because it's, 5-6 years away. They're doing that because it's coming relatively soon. So from everything that we know, they want to push the PlayStation 6 out sooner rather than later. And I mean, if they have all of the hardware already planned out, there is this idea that a delay could seriously mess up their plans. I mean, technically, the PlayStation 5 will be 8 years old in 2028, and by that point, you would assume that console sales would slow down a bit. But I'm not completely convinced of that just yet. See, the entire issue that Sony and all of these hardware makers are currently running into is the repercussion of the AI boom and how it's skyrocketing prices for things like RAM. Now, it sounds like things could get a lot worse before they get better, but basically, that's causing prices for consoles to go up. I think by this point, there's a very real scenario that we will see more price hikes this year. I mean, I would not be shocked at all if the Xbox Series X, the PlayStation 5, and the Switch 2 all goes up in price later in 2026. And let me just paint a picture for you real quick. See, a little over a year ago, fans were livid over the idea that the PlayStation 5 Pro would cost $700+. And even with the Switch 2, a lot of people were actually upset about its $450 to $500 price tag, which I said back then, that's a fairly good price for a modern handheld of its caliber. But my point is that if you think those prices are high, well, I got a wake-up call for you for next-generation hardware. I mean, if the PlayStation 5 Pro costs $700+, I mean, the PlayStation 6 might legitimately cost $800, if not even more than that, considering the AI boom and the impact that it's had on hardware. And that's what Sony, Xbox, and Valve are currently looking at. They're all looking at their next generation plans, and they're thinking to themselves that the price is going to be too high at launch, and at this rate, they're going to price themselves out of the market. And a successful launch is very important for consoles. So Sony doesn't want to come out and launch the PlayStation 6 at a price that's going to majorly impact its initial success. So a delay absolutely is on the table for them, and they might not be able to launch the PlayStation 6 until this situation is entirely eradicated, which, from what we've heard, this could go on for years. So we're not talking about just a 1-year delay. It could be a multiple-year delay, as the analysis pointed out. Now, again, technically that might be bad news for PlayStation because it messes up their plans. And the plans that all of their studios had to release their game on the PlayStation 6. But when you talk to consumers, I don't think most people will necessarily be bothered by this delay all that much. I really haven't seen a lot of people that are super excited for next generation because despite this generation now being 6 years old, it really feels like it's only now getting started. I mean, maybe that's because modern-day game development takes 5, 6, 7 years to develop a game, but it's also the fact that the PlayStation 6 and the Xbox Series X still looks great visually. I mean, I've said this before, but the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 6 were needed in 2020 because there was a need for 60 FPS and faster load times. But is there really a need for brand new consoles right now that would give consumers that same impact? I mean, they could add things like better ray tracing, 8K resolution for the few people that actually have an 8K TV, and maybe even more 120 FPS games. But that's not nearly the same jump or noticeable jump as we got with the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X back in 2020. I mean, we're kind of at the point of diminishing returns, and because of that, I just haven't seen a lot of excitement for next-generation consoles. I think fans right now just want this generation to be better and to have more games rather than having to spend another $800+ just to get into the next-generation life cycle. So in my opinion, bring on the long delay. I think these consoles could still live for years and fans would still be very happy with them. In fact, if they could find a way to just decrease the price of the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, maybe they will be able to continue to put up good numbers for years to come. Either way, though, I think a lot of fans would more than welcome a delay, but let me know what you all think about this. Are you disappointed by the idea that next generation could be delayed by possibly multiple years, or are you kind of relieved? Let me hear your opinion in the comments below. All right, now, one more thing before we go, though, because Nintendo just fully revealed Mario Wonder plus Meetup in Bella Bella Park for the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, we already knew about this game, but they dropped a lengthy overview trailer about some of the new things that it will include. And one thing that it seems like they poured a lot of attention to is its multiplayer elements, whether that be with online or local play. It's going to have a new game room plaza and everything, where it's going to have 6 different multiplayer attractions, which, I mean, that's pretty cool. Mario Brothers is always a good fun time for multiplayer, and they also gave us a look at the Koopalings and even Rosalina, which is now going to be a playable character. It's also going to have mouse mode, if that's something that you need for Mario Wonder. I don't know, but here's the thing. This will be a $20 upgrade, and that also means that the retail version will likely be $80, because the way Nintendo views it is that their base game is worth $60, and the new content adds another $20 on top of that, which personally I think that's ridiculous. I mean, most companies, when they release an older game with, extra content and things like that, they usually come with some kind of discount because they're older games. But Nintendo, they've been very money hungry this generation, is all I can really say. Their prices have been kind of wild, and I would like to think that these games aren't performing all that well for them, but they keep doing it. So they must be having some kind of success, or else they wouldn't keep doing it. But what I will say here is that I think they're choosing very strange games to upgrade to the Switch 2. I mean, I can understand Zelda because it needed a graphical and performance upgrade, but I'm not really so sure about Mario Wonder and Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Yeah, they are good games, there's no doubt about that, but I don't know if I would necessarily prioritize them over some of their other games, and I'm just going to leave it at that. What do you think about this, though? Are you on board for Mario Wonder on the Switch 2 or not? If you are, though, we'll be out on March 26th. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode, but until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.